Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Terror with Elena Chapman. My name is Della, and I will be the moderator for this evening. The Green Terror is a weekly interactive community group for seekers exploring ways to activate possibility and creativity in our lives. We delve deep into the spiritual dimension that we all ignore too often in our fast-paced modern world. The format of each week features a teaching to set the content for the week, followed by open conversation facilitated by Elena Chapman, providing opportunities for participants to engage, ask questions, share experiences, and deepen the teachings. All participants are automatically muted upon entry, so in order to give us an interactive portion of the Green Terror, please raise your hand and use the hand-raising tool at the bottom of your Zoom dashboard. Or either type in your chat section when you would like to comment, and then I will unmute you. We keep everyone muted so that we can continue the flow of conversations and ensure no background noise from participants' interference within the conversation. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you our host of the Green Terror for tonight, Miss Elena Chapman.
Well, hello, everyone, and how are you tonight? Tonight is all about, well, let me ask you, how do you feel about honoring yourself, that sacredness of honoring ourselves? I know sometimes when I start talking about this, I hear things like, but it's so selfish. And actually, honoring ourselves is one of the best things we can do, because we live in our heads most of the time, and we live in our heads so much that we forget to use the gifts of the Spirit. And one of the strongest 6 gifts of the Spirit is intuition. But you cannot have intuition if you are stuck in your head and you're not listening to the signs in your body, the signs in your heart. So how do we, the other thing about the sacredness of honoring ourselves is that if we don't understand what it's like to honor ourselves and to really begin to listen, then how are we supposed to help others to honor themselves? Or can we even honor them? You know, you can't ask a man without a shirt for a shirt, because without a shirt he doesn't have anything to give. Well, if you don't know what it's like to honor yourself, how can you honor others? So with this, I always think that honoring myself is one of the biggest steps, because without that wonderful connection to myself, I won't be able to hear my soul. I won't be able to be guided by Spirit. I won't be able to hear the subtle and soft voice of God. So how do we start to do this sacred honoring ourselves? Well, I actually started this practice on myself. Oh gosh, when was it? It was a few years back. It was when a shaman friend of mine said to me, he taught me this practice. And he taught me it's when you honor yourself, you're actually honoring the mind, the body, and the spirit. And you start by each of those categories. And I call it the sacredness of honoring ourselves, because when we do it, we start to unpollute our lives. And so we start building a more clarity in our life, because we're starting to unpollute it. What do I mean by that? Well, you start registering your feelings. So when something doesn't feel right and you say, why is that? then you can start to either take out what it is in this outside condition that you don't like, or you can question, well, why does that bother me? And then you've all of a sudden find this old belief that has been stopping you in so many ways because it's creating havoc in you. And then you have the power then to choose if you want to keep that core belief or not. So the sacredness of honoring yourself goes deeper than just our desires. It goes into every part of our life. So when we start unpolluting ourselves, then we can start really listening to every part. Our intuition, our imagination, how we're perceiving the world, how we're reasoning through the world. We find it easier to get the will to do things. So this honoring yourself is pretty cool. I always say it starts with the mind, and we work on basically how to, you know, who are we, what are we listening to? What are we following as far as our belief? How are we treating ourselves, our mind, and how we like, what are we filling it with? What are we reading? What are we watching? Are we watching movies where everybody's always fighting and gets that wonderful fight or flight thing going on in your hormones, you know, and but you never really see a real resolution except if it's after fighting, and that feeds something in you. It kind of pollutes everything, that there's always an enemy. But what, you know, you've got to take a look. You start looking at your life. You start looking at, am I taking time to just be with myself? Am I starting to eat the things for my body? Am I nourishing my body, or am I just filling a void? When we start to sacredly honor ourselves, our life changes like that, because we start to get in tune with us, our world around us, how we're relating to people and how they're relating to us, our environment, how are we living? And it's right then and there, you find that you are elevating your whole livelihood, your whole self up several notches. Now, I would love, it's kind of early, and this gives us a good conversation to start with. And I don't think we have too many people on today, so we can have a real good conversation if you like. If you would like to talk, this is a good time. But let me pose a question. What kind of question do you have about honoring yourself? And that will guide where I go. Does anybody have a question? Has anybody tried to do this practice of honoring themselves? Not yet, you just want to listen. Okay. All right, so I'll tell you a story. When I first started honoring myself, and I started it by doing my mind, okay? So if you have a piece of paper, you can take out some of these, but you have to add them yourself too. Honoring myself, so what was I filling my mind with? What was I filling, my mind? What was I listening to? I used to be a person who was very well informed. And by that I meant I would listen to everything on NPR. I was listening to all those shows. I was in those debates. I was listening. You know, I felt so like I was right on it. I was also, I like to listen. I listen to a lot of classical music. That's my nature. But then if I wasn't listening to that, I love minor keys. Minor keys, they have like a sadder sound to them, okay? I used to listen to a lot of that. I used to keep myself extremely busy, especially when I was not in the happiest part of my life. I would keep myself extremely busy, and that way I didn't have to think. I didn't have to feel. So I stopped all that when I began honoring myself. I started to think, okay, so I'm well informed. Does it make me feel good? Is it doing anything for me? Yeah, sure, I can do a debate. That's nice, although that's not my livelihood. It doesn't bring me anything. So what does it feel like when I'm done listening to those programs? Not so hot. Not so hot. It's sort of like watching those movies where people are always arguing and fighting, or the superhero things. That fight or flight gets in there, and it can make you argumentative. Okay, so that's not a good thing. So I started switching that. I started to turn on podcasts that were more uplifting and more feeding my inner self and starting to cure my curiosity. I also started listening to more science because I love science. So I started to tap into other interests in my life. And then as far as the minor keys in music, I still love the minor keys, but I would try to listen to music that was more uplifting or had more of a climax or more of something that would bring me to the wonder of source or God, that I would feel good. And I started to pick up habits that made me feel good in my mind. Like I have a thing for the sky. I love the vastness of the sky. So I started taking pictures of the sky, or the contrast between the trees and the sky, or the landscape and the sky. I started to fill my world with things that felt good, that didn't weigh on me, didn't weigh on my emotions and make me feel heavy, but made me feel lighter. I took a lot more walks in nature. I chose to be with good friends. Some of the groups I was in before were, well, they're downers. They're downers. And when I left the group, I always felt like heavy. And I thought, I don't like this feeling. So I started to talk to friends. I don't know, they just sort of appear. It's amazing. That were fun, actually lots of fun. And when I left them, I felt good and I would laugh. So see, when we're not honoring ourselves, we allow ourselves to feel heavy. We allow the emotions. We listen to all the ads. I don't even listen to the ads on the radio station. I'm on the radio station. One day, I turned on my show. I wanted to hear it. It was very new. It was like the third episode of my show. And I air on Sundays in the Midwest here. And I wanted to hear it. I was going to go pick up my mom for lunch. I had the boys in the car. And I turned it on, and it was a little early. And my gosh, the ads. As far as they were concerned, I already had a disease. I already had stuff going on in my house that needed fixed. It was like a litany of all the disasters in your life. And I thought, oh my gosh, and I haven't even reached a stoplight yet. And that's heaviness. See, when we don't listen to ourselves, we allow things to come in and actually pollute and fill our mind. And then we wonder why we've got brain fog. And we wonder why we can't focus, because we're inundated and we're polluted in there. When you start to honor what you're putting in your mind. And I decided I wanted to feed it things of, I still love, I love Stephen King, okay? I love that. I don't know. I just love to read his books. He's a wonderful author, and I love James Patterson. So I have my mystery, I have my scary. Well, I decided, okay, once in a while, I'll still do that. But I love to read things that bring me closer to God. And yeah, that's the Bible, but there's also wonderful books. I go online and I read Troward, who is an early 19th century writer. I went back and I studied everything with Wayne Dyer. I started going back and looking at his stuff. I started to meditate. I started to feed my mind in positive, good ways. And then what I did was I got myself going in the mind, and then I added something in the body. So I'd be doing one thing in the mind, one thing on the body, one thing on the spirit. And sometimes they cross over, like reading Troward. It's good for my mind, but it's also good for my spirit. It's starting to look at yourself and feeling. Now, and with the body, it's like understanding what we eat, exercise, treating it well, listening to it, being in tune with it, you know, really getting back into it, and like doing the yoga and releasing into the yoga. It's being fully present and conscious to feel everything in our body. That's pretty cool. Now, what does this all do for you? Well, I hope you can see it's already bringing you to a place where you are getting closer to what I call the I. When we study energy fields, and we study, which I have done, and studied the energies that surround us, and there are points in our body that are focused energy. Okay, we call it the first chakras. Chakras are those points of energy, and one of them is our foundational chakra. It's our first chakra. It's down by the groin. Anyway, it deals with the part of us where we went from being born, and when we have that wonderful I feeling, you know, sometimes I look in a baby's eyes and I say, oh my gosh, that baby knows exactly where it's going. It's like we are so fresh from source, or from where we come from, that we still have it. And we're into the I. We know we're here to experience. We're excited. We want to start crawling. We want to start getting going. You know, we're in that I, the pure I. It's not a selfish I. It is a pure I. It is connected totally with Source or God. And then all of a sudden we start to learn how to be, to get along in the world. And sometimes some of those rules are for our safety, and sometimes some of those rules are just society's rules. But a lot of times it takes us away from that purish I to all of a sudden we're worried about how to be the we. And then school gets us into there. Well, how do we want to be the we? How do we have to behave in class to be the we? How do we have to be, oh, I want long hair like Susie. I want, you know what I mean? You start to, all of a sudden it's we lose the I. And then we start to get into high school and college, and we're taught conformity. We're taught everything is we. And that's how we get stuck in our comfort zones. That's how we get stuck with doing what they say is normal that's not normal. That's how we get stuck in living life how other people want us to live it. And we also get affected. We get outside approval. The outside approval, such as the grades, the raise, everything that's outside makes us feel, instead of how we feel affects the outside. Do you see the difference? When you're honoring yourself, you know the we, you've lived it most of your life, but it's a way to come back to Source and God. It's a way to start to come back and hear and to feel something bigger than just what we're being told on the outside. And then when things don't feel quite right, we say, wait a minute, why doesn't that feel quite right? Well, that doesn't feel good to me. Well, why doesn't it? Maybe because I need a little more room today. Okay, then I'm going to find a little more room. Or I really need a meditation. I'm not going to get upset because everybody else says I need to be upset. I'm going to kind of, I don't feel that upset, even though everyone says I need to be upset. Everybody's in a panic. I don't feel like I need to be in a panic, and I'm okay with that. Do you see? The outside doesn't make you anything anymore. Now, I would love to hear somebody's opinion about this, because I know there has to be a question or a comment out there. So someone out there, I would love to know if you think this is possible. Have you tried this? Have you had success with it? What part of it do you understand or don't understand? Everyone just wants to listen. Della, why don't you start?
Okay. I didn't realize I was muted. I was talking.
Oh, were you talking?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that happens. I do that too. Oh, funny.
Yeah, I've had to trust my inner person a whole lot more than what I've been hearing other people's opinions or whatever the momentary reality may be. And for me, as I fine tune and focus from the inside out, I've learned that the glass is not even half full in my life, but more, full, period, than less. And so for me, it's taken some time to actually practice it and become it. Because I used to hear people, share stories like you, and I'm like, oh, that's easy for her, but, I couldn't do it. But I took little baby steps, and I would just, try to refocus in the moment. So just for instance, if I got a flat tire, instead of, thinking, oh my God, now I have to get a whole new set of tires, or my transmission's going all the way to the left like I used to do, I'll be like, oh, it's just a flat tire. I know how to change it. My sons know how to change it. Or I have AAA. They know how to come out and save me, and then, so what if I'm late? Whatever I was about to do, it'll be okay.
Right.
So I had to, just start looking at it for what it really was. And when I did that, I would have a greater sense of peace. And then that momentarily reality wasn't so despairing. And it wasn't the wall that came tumbling down to destroy every other moment after that, And so for me, I practice it more without even thinking now. It's becoming habitual for me,
Yes.
And not just on negative things or on things that are trying, but just in general things. I could just be sitting and eating lunch, and I'll get a thought, and 5 or 10 minutes later, that thought will become, that reality. And I'm like, oh, I just thought about that, or I just thought about that person, and so I'm actually enjoying it now, and I'm actually learning that you can adjust how you feel or how you interpret things just as quickly as they're happening to you.
Exactly.
And we have that power, I didn't have to wait on my mother or my husband or my best friend. That was a conversation I could have with myself and believe in myself, and that belief became or becomes.
You start to believe in yourself, and you start to believe in your capability, but you start to understand you're not alone, and there's something bigger always with you. That's good. You start to know that you will always be fine. It's okay. It's amazing what just the simple practice of starting to honor yourself does. That's why it's so sacred. And once you start unpolluting, your eyes start to open more, and you start to see. What was his name? Bruce Lipton. He did some incredible. He's a biochemist, and I think biochemist, but he did a lot of experiments with cells, and he was the first one, I think it was in 1969, that discovered that cells are not just genetically influenced. And he actually learned that cells are totally affected by their circumstances. And he did that several ways. One way, he took cells and he had 3 different petri dishes, this one experiment. And one of them, he had blood, another one he had bone marrow, and another one he had skin. Actually, I'm not sure, but I made skin up. The other 2 are actual. So then he put a little bit of the same cells in each of them that were nothing cells. They were just starting. And then he left them overnight. And when he came back, he found that although those cells were the same from the same source, when he put them in each of the different petri dishes, they became more and they grew more with whatever was in that dish. So the cells that were in the dish with the blood became blood cells and then just grew and grew and grew. The ones that were in the bone marrow, they were affected by their outside source, the bone marrow, the blood, to influence who they would become. Isn't that interesting? So are we what we eat and listen to? Oh, yes, we are. But as people, we don't want to be like the cell. I thought the coronavirus was a very interesting thing because there seemed to be different groups of people. You know, there were the people who have always been home, so it didn't affect them very much. You know, they work from home. You had the other people who were just panicking. I mean, the fear of having to live with people that they don't know anymore, like their husband and kids, seemed to just throw them into a turmoil. Or the idea of not being able to be out doing things and having to be alone with their thoughts scared the living daylights out of people. I mean, it really scared them. All of a sudden, my social media feeds were filled with food, what everybody was eating. But they were, it was just a very interesting, or how they were all just bumming it, watching Netflix by tons and tons. They could not deal with their own thoughts. And most of them, the ones, and it's really funny, this is what I noticed. The ones that had the hardest time are the ones who were so in tune with what was going on in the news. Who were so in, and at that time, the news was all over the place. You got to do this. No, you got to do that. No, you got to do this. No, we don't know about that. You know, it was just crazy. And so you were getting fed this chaos, which if you're affected by outside circumstances, creates chaos on the inside. But for those who knew better, or just had experience with learning how to be more understanding that we work from the inside out, not the outside in. They saw what was going on out there. They thought, okay, this is another time. This is time for me to work on the relationship with my kids. This is the time for me to get some things done around the house. This is the time for me to maybe grow myself. This is a time where I need to find other places to get some of my sources because everybody's hoarding everything. This is the time where I am going to discover a little bit more about me. And this is the time where I'm going to go in overdrive on learning how to honor my own thoughts, really take up that yoga seriously, really meditate a little bit more, really create some fun times with my kids. And that fear, like when you go out and somebody isn't wearing a mask, you're not like, oh my God, they're not wearing a mask. Oh my God, they are wearing a mask. There was just so much. You don't have that. And instead, you build the good. It helps if you're working from the inside out because you've honored yourself and you're really learning about yourself and you're starting to understand and you're feeding yourself good stuff. And then all of a sudden, this bad stuff, all of a sudden you say to yourself, you know what? I don't need the bad stuff. I don't want to pollute. That's the sacredness. I don't want to pollute. I want to keep my inside sacred because that's that's my spirit. And I don't want it all polluted. And I don't want it all confused. And instead, I think this is the period of time when I can bring it out further and build something good. See the difference? It's starting to come back to something that's very powerful, the I. And you end up doing more for others. It's amazing. Because just take that coronavirus thing. If I'm in a dither and I'm all like, oh my God, and I've got anxiety and my heart's beating fast and I can't, and I'm pulling the covers over my head and I look like I haven't taken a shower in 7 days and I'm just freaking out, who am I helping? Who am I growing with? Or I'm glued in front of Netflix and I watch all the shows and I watch every single do that massive, what is it, when you watch all of them, I don't know what they call that, but addiction. But anyway, who am I helping then? No one. I'm not even helping myself. How can I help anyone else? My temper gets shorter because of course my mind is in a fog, and we live that way. So start today, and if you guys have a piece of paper, which you should in front of you, label at the top the beginning of my sacred honoring of me. I like that. Sounds special already. And then I would like you to put one category: body, mind, and spirit. I'll let you do that. Okay, now, underneath each of those categories, I would like to know one thing, just one. Remember baby steps. I am so big into baby steps. Baby steps can conquer mountains, mountains. But I want you to put one under each category. So what is something, how can I sacredly honor myself with my body? How can I sacredly honor myself with my mind? And how can I sacredly honor myself with my spirit? Just one under each category. My cat's sitting behind me, so I can't back up, and I'm about to slide off the chair. And I think it's so funny. Where'd she go? Oh, she left. Oh, I thought I heard her purring, so now I can go back a little bit more. There. Usually my white dog is sitting behind me, and my big red dog is sitting at my feet. He's sitting over there now, and I don't know. My little white Sammy's sitting behind the chair. I don't know why. It must be because it's warmer now. Doesn't need my heat. Okay, did we do that? All right. So does anybody have any questions to this point or comments? We're a very small group tonight. I think it's because we didn't get it out there in time. So you don't have to be embarrassed. I think we've just got a handful of people. So if you want to comment, this is a great time. We don't have hundreds listening.
I have a question.
Yes.
And this is a question that I had to ask myself as I go through this journey, is why is it sometimes easier to trust someone else versus trusting that person that looks back at us in the mirror? So, and I think
that's a fantastic question, Della, because that's what we've been taught.
Yeah. And
We've
I
been,
think if there's a way, especially for me as a parent, to not teach that to the next generation, it'll be easier for them to get the points that you're
yeah,
sharing and for life to be greater.
yeah,
Because, as we have our parents, so we trust what our parents taught us until we got to a certain age and maybe try something differently or, whatever. But there's still that genuine trust in what your mom or your dad may say, especially if you grew up in a loving household. Then you
yeah,
might pass that trust over to a husband or a wife, or you might pass that over to a pastor or rabbi. Instead of all of that trust goes outward first normally, and instead of it coming inward to us.
yes,
And I just find that fascinating. So because that's what I had to find for me, that I would trust somebody else's, not just anybody, but someone that meant something to me. I would trust their word or their methods
you,
or their
yeah,
understanding before my own. And I
yeah.
just thought that was I now think that's so backwards,
Because, well, that's what we've learned. And I didn't really learn it that much, believe it or not, until I went to school. I knew it a little bit. I was a pretty precocious, independent soul. And, but school, I went to a Catholic school, those nuns, this is how it's done, only one way. And they wouldn't allow me to even things I knew were better for me as a first grader. But I knew some things about myself. We do, we all do, whether we're 2 years old or 4 years old or 6. And I knew that for me to focus, I already knew that I had trouble focusing on some things. I had a form of dyslexia, which my father was my biggest asset in that, actually. He never told me I had it, but he gave me the tools to deal with it. And so I never felt like I knew that I didn't focus like the other kids, like math problems. What would I do? I would put I created a story for every number. So like every number had its own character and personality, and they all played together, and so I'm in this other world creating these stories and these adventures, and all I had to do was add 2 plus 3. So in order to keep me grounded, I knew that if I just hummed a little bit, my mind would stay here. But if I stopped humming, I went off because my mind learns a different way. And so I really had to, but the nuns wouldn't let me hum. And I kept saying, but sister, this is helping me, but she didn't care. She wanted me to be like the rest of the class. She could have asked me why and then helped me with that, but no, it was more important that I conform. And because she was sister and she was persistent and made her authority known, and you had to respect your elders, and she was the teacher, and you go to the principal's office, all of a sudden you have to respect what she says. She's a sister, for heaven's sakes. My God, who else are you going to believe, right? So then you go through losing a little piece of the trust in you that I knew how to get my mind focused. But that was not in the scheme of things, she said. So I started to untrust the fact that I knew how to focus my own mind. See, that's a chip right there. Lack of trust in myself and my ability to solve my own problem. And that chip keeps going, and it keeps going, and it keeps going. And it gets worse, and it gets worse, and it gets worse. Until when you grow up, and then when you do really well to listening to the outside authority, then you get A's, you get promotions, you get raises. What do you get for listening to the inside authority? You get happier, I can tell you that. But you don't get anything outside. There's no fanfare, no party. Do you see? And we start to lose the whole self. And it can get so bad that we make decisions on our life based on outside influences that lead us down the wrong road. So how do we, so when we, sacredly honoring ourselves is I think should be taught before we even start to try to change our perception or anything. Because believe it or not, when you start to sacredly honor yourself and you start to do this kind of routine, you start to naturally start to change your perceptions. And you start to naturally, without the hardships, start to change your desires. Because it's already in you. You're starting to tap what's already in you that you have ignored. Now, Della, you asked a great question. I'm taking a very long route around, I'm sorry. But as far as our kids, teaching our kids this, I have found that the best way, I have 3 boys. If I walk around and say, honor yourself, they're all taller than me. They look at me, Mom, what? But from the time they were really young, I've always said that people earn your trust. That was a big thing. You don't just trust them because they say they're who they are. They have to earn your trust. And if you think it's better, you got to listen to yourself. So when there was a problem with a teacher, I would always go back to my son and say, okay, what's going on? And we had some hard lessons. I had one son who would always lie. I said, well, if you lie, I can't help you. And why do you want to lie? Why are you conforming totally to what's wrong with what you want? Why do you have to lie? So we had a whole issue going through that. It's getting them to understand, it's building their faith in themselves and not letting someone chink it off. And then when they get to be older, all of a sudden, it's a hard one. It's trust. Because if you don't trust them as the master leader in their life and the person they trust the most, if you don't trust them, then they won't trust themselves. And so even when they're doing things that you don't agree with, and you can state, I always state if I think that they're going down a road that I think is going to be a longer lesson. I always say, okay, I personally feel you're taking a very long road. And if you want to hear some options that we can shorten that road, I'd be happy to talk to you. But if you feel you need to go down that, then I'm here if you need me. That's up to you. And you have to let go. You really do. It's not our journey. We're here to guide. We are not here to force. They're not mini eyes. They are here for their own purpose. And if, I have one son that is going to, he's doing one route where he's now interning at, Collins Aerospace something or other for the government. He's always been one, he's like me. He's always been one who's gone way above in studying. I was big in academia. I love learning. So he loved physics and he loved optics and he's just soaring and his career is just going one way and he's taking the shortcut and going. I've got another one who's looking for himself. He thinks he might like this. He wants to try different things. He wants to go another route. It's a longer road, but he's a natural born entrepreneur and he needs that journey to find out what he really wants. And who am I to say you have to do it like your brother or that you have to do it just one way? Do you see? But I'm always here if he needs me. I'm always here. But I have to trust that he has to listen to himself. Does that answer your question, Della?
It does. It does.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be a parent. I'd say we all need a handbook, but then we're learning from an outside source. So no handbook.
So true. So true.
All right. Does anybody else have a question or a comment? I feel like Della and I are just sitting on the, this is a discussion group, guys. This is not Elena's showtime. No, everybody. Pamela, you've been on a couple times. Do you have anything you would like to say?
Hi, hello, can you hear me?
I can. Hello.
Hello. Yes, I'm just enjoying it, absorbing it all, and totally agreeing with everyone. So that's about it, because I am experiencing some of the exact same things.
Have you been honoring yourself? Is this a new concept? An different or anything?
No, I try to do a lot of that. Help stay focused, stay positive. And I was listening to what they were saying. I have a heart trying to keep myself motivated. It is so easy for me to motivate and encourage someone else, but then working on keeping me motivated when things going on are not going the way that I feel it should be going, you know, and I sort of slump down. So, but it's so easier for me to do for someone else other than for myself.
Well, isn't it always?
Exactly. So that's
Well,
what
you're
I'm
a
working
natural
on.
born teacher. I can tell, you know,
Yeah.
you're a people person. You know, when we, this is the thing, and it says a step from the honoring thyself, but, you know, I say sacredly honoring, which is a little bit different. I know some people talk about honoring themselves, but I always add the sacredness because it is that unpolluting of oneself. And we all do that. I actually, you know, I'm writing this book, Hello Soul, and there's just some days when we're doing, this is the first time, I have 2 bestsellers out. So I've written other books. And this is the first time I have this new editor who is like, oh my God, she's like a lion tamer. She's just, you know, we're doing second drafts, we're doing third. I'm like, oh my God. So anyway, there's, you know, this weekend, as a matter of fact, I was looking through the edits and I'm thinking, oh, and I got really like, I just wasn't motivated. I just didn't want to do it. And I honor that. The one thing about honoring yourself is you look back and say, oh, wow, I really don't want to do this. And then the sacredness comes in and just says, okay, I'm going to honor this, but why? Why am I not motivated? And it'll pop up. It'll pop up like that.
Right.
And then you have the choice to say, okay, for me it was, well, God, this is never going to end. And then I could talk logic to it and say, okay, we got to take this off in smaller pieces, you know, but for you, it might be, you know, all right, because this is hard. This is hard, or I don't see this is going well. Okay, all right then. So let's do a meditation, or let's get a cup of tea and a piece of paper and just start thinking of why does this seem so hard, and what do I want to change about it? See, I think when things get really hard, yes, we're going to have challenges, but in every hardness, it's like that book, oh God, what is it? U2, or is that the singing group? Well, anyway, Quantum Leap. It's the fly. We're like the fly. When things aren't going right, we keep banging our head against the glass trying to get out. We want it out. We want it easier. We want another route that's going to be easier for us. But we never leave the freaking glass. And yet behind us is a door.
Right.
Well, we just go with it's hard. We don't listen to ourselves and say, okay, but why is it so hard? Register that. It's real. Because I'm not going on the right road, or something's not clicking, or people don't seem to be responding the way I want. So what do I need to do differently? And then I come up with different ideas. And before I know it, I'm morphing the whole concept into a different road. I'm taking the door. I'm not going to beat my head on the glass anymore.
Okay.
But if we stay in our head and we just think it's hard, and we don't do the sacredness of looking at, okay, how can I morph this a little bit? And do a meditation, get into that wonderful space of everything and nothing, or do a journey where you're sitting in the universe's or God's hand and just say, I need a little guidance on how to make this simpler. And you might hear it then, or you might hear it when you start writing. But in honoring yourself, that's one of the best parts of it, is starting to see that you have the power to co-create, and you have the power to change anything you don't like. Do you see?
Yes, I do. And I totally agree with that. Yes.
But it's making it work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it takes practice, but by honoring yourself and asking the serious questions is the first thing. And then thinking about, okay, all right, I don't like what's happening here. I've had that happen most. I'll give you for instance, because I've had some, I go down the wrong road. I'm a human, I do it too. For a time there, in all goodness, I had a friend who was, she was a friend for almost 20 years. And I trusted him. And he was in this field long before I was. And so I trusted his word because he had been around. And and he told me, oh, no, you got to do it this way. Well, I thought, all right, he knows more than me in this field. I'm new. So, all right, I'll listen to him. Oh, my Lord. It was costing me money. It was not getting results. And all I could see was myself falling deeper and deeper into a hole. And I really had to register. It got so that every time he called, I had a pit in my stomach. And I finally started looking at that pit and I thought, oh, because every time he calls, it seems to cost me money. He's soaking me here. And I thought, this doesn't feel right. And I could feel this, like my spirit was just going, no, little twinges in me going, no, right. Don't go that way. And it took me sitting down and talking to two other friends and just kind of processing why I was feeling this little twinge of no every 2 minutes. And it was really, sorry. Oh, somebody just came into sorry. It was that feeling. I had to talk to someone and get that feeling of, okay, I understand now. And it's okay that I don't want to do what he says. And that is not my journey. That's his. And I had to trust myself in just morphing that. But when I sat down and said, okay, what do I need to change? It came out loud and clear. All of a sudden, my heart actually, Pamela, started to sing. It's like I could see myself doing small groups. I could see myself doing this. I could see myself just really, hold on, I am going to actually have to answer the door. I'm sorry, and I'm taking you with me, so you're gonna all walk with me. I started, it was like my spirit started to open up and say, this is what you really want to do. You don't want to do what he's saying. You want to open up and form real connections with the people you're talking to. And you want to talk about spiritual because you know it. You don't want to just talk about money. That's easy. So see, that's what it brought me. But I had to honor and sacredly ask myself, why am I feeling this urge constantly? What is this? And I had to sit down with myself and think through it. And I'll tell you, every time you do that, that door behind you opens where you can fly right out,
Right.
So give it a good shot. I hope that helps.
Yes, it did. It did. It really did. I mean, it even took me back to, I had a girlfriend that used to have a group, at my church, and I used to help her out. And it was dealing because she used to be an addict and she had been clean for so many years. So I used to go in and just help and assist and just listen, because I never experienced anything, but on a spiritual level, I can share certain things. And it got to a point where she would get a little upset because I never experienced that. So she would tell me, well, you don't know, you never experienced it. You're right, because I never did drugs. So then it got to a point where I wasn't feeling comfortable just even going to the meeting. And I was going to support her. So yes, I had a meeting with my pastor about it. He said, if you're happy before you get there and you leave and you're not happy, then that's not what you need to be doing.
That's
so
right.
I eventually just stopped going and stopped participating, but we're still
Oh,
friends.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it got a little crazy there for a minute. But I understand. But right now, the only thing I'm really dealing with is the manifestation, because I do a lot of meditation, and like I said, I listen to a lot of things, and the law of attraction, and just wanting that to just pour in and just take over. And to some days I had good days where I just see things that's happening, it's going the way I wanted to go, and then there's days that it's just totally off, and then I'm like,
okay, manifestation.
And it bothers me. It's like, why everybody else around me doing all this, everything is just falling and it's just flowing, and I'm struggling. So I had that's what I'm dealing with right now. I had them days, and it's
manifestation is have you ever heard of the law of gestation? I do a lot with the law of attraction. Actually, I just I have a show coming out, not this weekend but next weekend, and it's with what's her name? Oh crap. Oh, Constance. So if you're on my Facebook and you see a show, Magical Moments, and you see Constance and I were talking, that whole show is about manifestation. Okay. But I will talk a little bit here too. And actually it was a really good show. But the law of gestation is a very, it's one of the primary laws. Law of attraction is a secondary law. Okay. And it's made up of, this is what I say it's made up of, vibration.
Right.
Everyone says vibration, but it's also made up of the first one, perpetual transmutation, which is our thoughts.
Right.
And the law of gestation, which is the law of becoming. The law of gestation says when you plant that little seed and that little tree, that willow tree seed into the ground, it knows everything. It has the belief of what it's going to be. It knows it's not going to be a maple tree. It knows it's not going to be tree. It knows it's a willow tree, but it's not the willow tree yet. And then how it starts to send out its roots and sense that ground and says, ooh, that ground feels really good. Ooh, that's really yummy food. Okay, I'm going to set up a stem. And it sets up the stem, and the stem reaches through the ground and starts to feel that sun. Oh my God, that sun feels good. I want that warmth. And I start putting out leaves. And every part of the journey, maybe when it was coming up through that ground, it had a rock, and the rock was right in its pathway. Well, it can't go through the rock, but it didn't stop it from becoming what it was supposed to become. It went around the rock. And so every lesson it learned, I love to say, puts the uniqueness in the tree. Okay. The gnarlness, the whatever, but it becomes the tree. But that's the law of gestation. And it's how we move through becoming what we're becoming. So when you have obstacles and stuff, that's like the rocks. And it does take time to kind of look and back up and say, okay, how do I want to proceed with this? And why is it going so easily for them? But with the law of gestation and the law of everything, it is also in this, the willow tree never asked if it's going to be a willow tree.
Okay.
So the whole time that you're going through the gestation, you have to believe that whatever it is you want on the other end, what you're trying for, is just going to happen, period. Because I am that person.
Right.
So how do you do that? I have one really favorite thing I like, and I'll give it to you if you like.
Yeah,
There's
please.
there's affirmations, but I like um, I like feeling. Feeling reaches the universe.
Right.
Feeling. It's how we feel. But if it's fake, that's not going to work. So what we want to do is we want to create that. I wanted something to help me believe it. When I was writing my first book, that was a fluke. Okay, I was journaling. I didn't think it was going to be a book. And then all of a sudden, I saw Bob Proctor and Peggy McCall. Oh my God, you got a book. Oh my gosh, we're going to make this. You're going to be an international bestseller. What's an international bestseller? That wasn't even on my radar. So
Right.
when all of a sudden I had to start believing I was an author, which I'm not. I was a musician. So how in the hell am I going to become an author? So I decided, okay, let's build it. Let's build it. So I made a tape. I wrote out a script and I read it into a tape recorder on my phone. And I added music. And I said, Elena, I am so proud of you. You are an international best-selling author. You did it, girl. You did it. And I made it really up and really cool. And I picked music I really liked to go behind it. And then I listened to that. I listened to it every time there was a challenge. I listened to it when I put on my makeup. I listened to it when I was in my car. I listened to it all the time. And just the excitement. My dogs are very boisterous today. Just the pure excitement of my voice would raise my vibration. So you can do something like that, and it builds your belief, because it's building the belief. I had another friend, though, who was writing a book at the same time as me, her first book, and she was a hairdresser. And she did it another way. I like my way. But she did it her way, which is good too. And she set an alarm clock, and every two hours it would ring, and she would write down 25 times, I'm an international best-selling author. I'm an international best-selling author. She would write it down 25 times every 2 hours. You can do both. You can do a morphing of them, or you can do just one or the other.
Wow. Okay.
It's building. The more you believe in who you are becoming, it speeds up the law of gestation.
Wow. Okay. And does that help intuition side as well?
Your intuition, yeah, intuition guides you.
Yeah.
The intuition, oh my God, that's what helps you get past the obstacles. The intuition is what stops you from beating your head against the glass and looking at the door behind you. This wasn't right. This guy's leading me down a hole of endless money. That's not right. My body's saying, no, no, no. Well, then what am I going to do? I'm going to open. I'm allowing myself to open and say, okay, I got to go around this rock. And this is what I want to do with it. Do you see?
Right. Yeah, that's it. Because I'm still trying to keep that intuition going and build every day as well. To focus and
you will. You just have to. This honoring yourself will open it up. Yeah, it'll open it up. But there's nothing wrong with, you've got to. Oh, who was it who said it? Was it Neville or was it someone else? But I love this concept. We put forth that wonderful mold of what we want. Mm-hmm. And when we believe it and we form that mold in all its delicacy in our mind, because you visualize who you're going to be, you just know it's going to be there by listening to the tape or whatever, then the universe or God then fills the mold.
Okay.
Okay?
Awesome. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, listen to that show when it comes out. You'll have fun. It's a good show. You might get some other nuggets in there too.
Okay. So good. Thank you.
Oh, well, I'm glad you spoke. I would have never understood what you were going through. I so appreciate that. Now, see, I can help. I love that.
Yes.
Now, yeah, and I like having you on. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
So, who else would like to have a comment? Who else do we have on? I get a little bit of, all I see are numbers. 1337 78317. Oh gosh, 825. I screwed that up. Do you want to speak at all?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Are you getting a lot out of this?
I am enjoying it, yes.
I'm so glad. I do hope you come back. We always talk about something more, but yeah, definitely along these lines. Wonderful. Well, I'm glad you're here. Very glad. All right, guys. So that is honoring yourself. Now, this week, that's sacred honoring. This week, try the one thing you wrote down in each category. And then when you feel like in 2 days that you've done really well with that, do what my good friend Bob says. Then you get another dish in the air and start spinning it. Add one in each category. Okay?
Okay.
But don't forget the sacredness. If there's something that comes up or you feel that intuition, don't just say, ooh, okay, there it is. Say, why? Why? And that's where the real unpolluting happens. And that's where the answers come clear. And that's when the heart starts to sing. Intuition is just a way that says, hey, listen to yourself. Listen to me. Okay?
Okay.
That's what intuition's about. All right. All right. Remember, folks, that love is spirit, and spirit brings us to love. Okay?
Okay.
I love you all. Namaste.
Thank you so much.
I'll
Thank
see you next week. Okay.
All right.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, my friends. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.